All right, hey everybody, I'm Tim. I'm with the MSSA program for Cloud Application Development. I'm with Richard here. He's going to really be running through the main tutorial here pretty much on how to establish a database along with an MVC and get scaffolding within those so you could work with your controllers and models and views. So yeah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Richard right now.
All right, hey everybody, I'm Richard. Like Tim said, I'm in the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy Cloud Application Development course, and we thought about making this video just to help out explain some things that might be a little confusing in what we're looking over right now. So we're starting off by creating a database. So you select we're in Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, and we got we pulled up to the local database. This is my database server. You'll have to select whatever server you're using, and then we just connect to it.
Yeah, just for an additional little point here, you do need to make sure that you install SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio. You need both of those components for this to actually work and be able to interface with your MVC.
Okay, yep. So we got the query, new query. Pull up to here. So we're going to start off by making a database. So to create a database, we're just going to say create database, and we're going to name it. So we're going to be looking at some books and authors in this little project. So we can call it books, authors, DB. And we're going to hit F5 to create the database. So F5, and it says that it's been completed successfully. Come down here, we're going to comment this out just so it doesn't get created again later on when we start adding more information on this page. Next, we want to use that database we just created. So it's going to be use books, authors, DB. And right now it's just saying that it doesn't exist, but we just created it. The computer's just running a little slow. We can hit F5 one more time just to switch it over to this database. So F5 says it's been completed, and if you look up here, we're actually on the database we just created. So again, we want to comment this out just so we don't run it again for no reason. Next, we want to start off by creating some tables. So before you would create a table, you always want to make sure that the create table is not already contained inside the database. So here we're going to say create or drop table if exists. And we're going to name this table, we'll start with authors. So authors, semicolon. Next, we want to create the actual table. So create table authors. Next, we want to open and close parentheses just so you don't forget to close it later on. And inside these parentheses, we want to identify what columns we want inside the table. So first, we're going to start off with an identifier, which makes every row in the table unique. And to do that, we're just going to name it ID. We want to make it an integer and set it to primary key identity. By making it a primary key identity, it's saying that we are going to use this ID you can call this row using this ID, and we don't have to create the actual numbers that are going into the rows by setting it as identity. So by setting it as identity, it's automatically going to be creating an ID for each row, incrementing by one number.
Yeah, just what he said right there. So that primary key, that's going to be your unique value for every single row. So there cannot be a duplicate within there. And just like he said for the identity, it's going to start off at 1. And every single time that you put in a new row, it's just going to go up one number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep. All right. Now, authors, we want, let's say, first name. And we're going to call it nvarchar. And the reason why we use nvarchar is because in case somebody from another country is wants to put their name in here, or the author is from another country, we don't want to limit this to only varchar, which would just be US letters and alphabet. And varchar makes it so you can use the whole world's letters and alphabets. And then next, we can set it to 40 digits. That should be long enough for a first name. And then we're going to set a last name. Same thing, and varchar. And we could set it to 40 as well. Finally, just put a different type of data in this table. We just put age, and it'll just be an integer, just to add another column in the table, really. Next, we're going to see the data with one row at least, just so we can see it later on once we connect it to the program and run it. So here we're just going to say insert, and we're going to call the table name, so authors, and we want to identify which columns we're going to be inserting the information to. So here, like I said earlier, ID is automatically going to be incremented by 1 because of the identity, so we do not have to add that. We just need the first name, last name, and age. So here we can say first name, last name.
Do you need the into after the insert? Or no, never mind.
Oh, and age. And then next, we're going to set the value of one row. And I'll show you how to add a second row. It's pretty easy, but I'm going to go ahead and just make one. I'll just delete it afterwards. So we're going to say values, and we're going to set it to, first of all, we're going to set, they're both strings for the first name and last name. And in SQL, you got to remember it's single quotes and not double quotes for strings. And I could just say Richard Lee, and my age 33. And we just, if we want to add more, we say comma. And if we're going to add more than one value, I like to tab it down and bring it up to the next line, just so it's easily to read. So then we could just do this one, and I guess I'll leave it in here. So we got Tim, Weigel, oops, and he's, I think, 23.
I am.
All right, and then so this will insert values into the table that we created up here, and I like to just select a wildcard just to make sure that we got all the information correctly inside the database. So select star from and authors. This will allow us to look at this what we just input into here and display it. So here we just copy these. If you copy and hit F5, it'll only run the code that you've selected. So in this case, it'll just do what I've selected here. So hit F5, and it looks like it created it properly. We got the ID, first name, last name, and age. And as I said earlier, it'll increment the ID on its own. Next, we want to create one more table, and we'll just go through it one more time just so it could essentially reestablish what we've already created again. So first we're going to start with drop table if exists, and this time we're going to say books. Next we're going to say create table and books again. And again, that's only because we want to make sure that if this table already exists, we want to erase it and create it with the table that we're making right now. Next, open close parentheses, and we want to put what we want inside the table. So for the books table, we're going to start off with an ID again to make sure that each row is unique. So it's going to be an integer, primary key, identity, xdel.rog by identity. And then next, we could say the book has a title. And we'll call that varchar or nvarchar for the same reason as name. We can add books from other countries. And since the title could be kind of long, we just say 120 characters. And then next we could say category. And this, again, would be in varchar, but this could be in another table, and we could call to it as we're about to do the authors. But for this program we're creating, we're just going to be creating 2 tables and really only like 1 or 2 categories. So say category, and this could just be 40 characters. And finally, we're going to set a foreign key relationship to this table up here. And that what that lets us do is it allows us to refer to the authors in the book without creating a first name, last name, and age every single time we want to use that author. And that essentially creates a one-to-many relationship where there's one author could write many books.
Yeah, and that relationship right there too. When you are creating this, if you're ever creating a database, you need to make sure that if you have a foreign key dependency, like Richard's about to do, that your table that it's relying off of, so in this case our authors, is created first. Otherwise, you're going to get an error when you try to build it.
All right, thank you. So we got here, we're going to name author ID. And this is going to be an integer because we're pulling this right here. And we're going to say foreign key references. And here we're going to name the table first. So it's authors, and then parentheses the ID, which is the identity we want to use. So authors, quote, ID. And that right there will set it up so you could have a relationship with this table up here. Next, we want to input some data into the table. So we're going to say insert and call it books. Oops. And we're going to grab, again, we don't need the ID. So we're going to do title, category, and the author ID. So we got here, we got title, category, author ID. And then we're going to set the values. So here we got, so the title, we could call it, let's start with Tim's book. And here, doesn't like it. I think we need to do that. I actually forgot how to do this. Probably not good.
Yeah, for SQL, I'm actually not sure. That's how you do it in C# though.
Well, now it's going to just be Tim's book. And then category is, he's doing nonfiction. And the author ID, we're going to set it equal to Tim. So he's number 2 from what we created up here. And you can see it again here, down here. And we're just going to go ahead and create one book. So, and then finally, we want to look at what we've created. So select star from books. And again, we're going to highlight only what we want to run. So we're going to be running from when we check if the book exists, we're going to drop it. Books table exists, we're going to drop it. Create the table called books. Insert the value into that books, and then select star from books. So if we hit F5, it'll show us that, hey, we have one row with, it's Tim's book. So now we finished creating our database and 2 tables in it. We're going to go hop onto Visual Studio and begin creating the application that connects to this database. So you just close out of here. You don't have to really save it. It's saved to the database already. So here we have Visual Studio up. This is pretty much once you click the Visual Studio, it shows you this screen. We're going to create a new project. And it's going to be an ASP.NET Core web application. Make sure it's core, not framework, and that it's in C#. So if we select it, we go to next. And, oh, I guess, so if that's not I use this often, so it pops up as one of the first ones here, but you can always come up here and put ASP.NET and hit enter, and it's going to be one of the first. You can see the .NET frameworks, you don't want to use that. You don't want to use F#, even though it says ASP.NET Core. Make sure it's ASP.NET Core, Web Application, and C#. So we could name this books, authors, lots of typos, books, authors. All right, cool. And it's just going to go to this location that's standard. You could select any location that you want to put your project in. And then we'll create it. And we are going to use the web application with models, views, and controllers already in it. So we're going to select that. It just makes it easier to start off, essentially, because we don't have to put extra code into the startups and all the other things. Here, Tim, if you want to talk about this HTTPS, I'm going to not check it.
Yeah, so the HTTPS, that's just Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. So that's going to be for a certificate, so whether you're a trusted website or not. So for this application, we're just building it locally. So when you try to run it in a browser, you can get an error from the security within that browser just saying, hey, this is not a trusted website. So he's just unchecking that so we don't get that when we actually open up the application.
Thank you. And then we're going to create the application. So Visual Studio is creating it. So to start off, we're just going to go, okay, here we go. Start off, we're going to go ahead and open all the controllers, models, views. And what I'm going to do is essentially clean it up to a point where it's pretty much a blank application. So if I'll go ahead and run this once and show you what comes with an MVC project if you select it. So Control-Shift-B to build, and then F5 to run it. Doesn't want to run. Maybe I'll click this. All right, here we go. You can see here it says localhost 57155. We're going to be changing that just for ease of use later on. And we're also going to be getting rid of this navigation bar up here and this copyright bar down here. And we'll be changing the information on the inside to just display whatever we want. So the goal in the beginning is just going to be a blank slate. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this and say, go through and say, start off with errors. And we're just going to go ahead and delete it. I don't need that right now. And validations as well. Just going to go ahead and delete that one. And privacy, delete it. So we can start from view start. It just says that we're going to be using a layout. View imports, what we're using. When we go to layouts, here we have, this is where the navigation bar is located at. We're just going to go ahead and get rid of that one. So from header to header. Make sure it's not head up here, but it says header to header. We can go ahead and just delete that. And also footer to footer. You can see, we're going to delete that. That just cleans it up. Any code that we put inside the index is going to be going inside here, essentially. And that allows us to not have to add all these things and down here every time we create a Razor view.
Yeah,
next
so
yep.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, so with the layout, how it was being imported, every single view that you have will automatically have that layout. So if you did want to have a nav bar in the header section, you could have that, and throughout every single view, that will be displayed.
Yep. All right, and then just going up the line, we'll be modifying this later on. So this view models, we don't really need it, error view models, but we don't want it to throw an error in the beginning. So we're just gonna go ahead, we're gonna end up deleting this whole file once we create the models from scaffolding. But right now we're just gonna leave this one alone. Finally, we go to the home controller, and it has the controller to make the view errors pop up and the privacy popped up, but we deleted both of those. So we're just going to go ahead and delete the controller that controls those parts, the methods that controls those, and we'll leave the rest of this alone. So from there, we're going to go back to the index and say, hey, we're going to change what it displays in the beginning. So we could go here and say H1, let's say H1 tab, makes it so it creates the tags, and say hello from index. And we're just going to go ahead and Control-Shift-B to build it, and then F5 to run it. And we can see that it's going to be a blank. Oh, we forgot to change the localhost. So we'll go back and change that once we finish loading this one up. So hello from index, no more navigation bar, no more footer bar, and it's just a clean slate. So we can go ahead and close that. Next, we're going to go ahead and change that localhost address just to make it easier to use later on. We go to the project right here, and you right-click it, you go to Properties, and you go to Debug, and you scroll down, and you can see that the localhost is set to this random number. We're going to change it to 5,000, just so it's easier, and then Control-S to save. And then we could close that out. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and install some packages so we can begin scaffolding the models. So we go to Tools, Nuget Package Manager, Nuget Package. So manage Nuget packages for solution. So if we select this, it'll take us to this little screen. I have nothing installed in this solution right now. So we're going to go to Browse, and we need to install Entity Framework Core, and we're going to go through, we're going to search it, but we only need the tools and the SQL Server. So we're going to select the tools. We can select this top box, we'll add whatever is inside your solution. Right now we only have one project in the solution, so it selects that. And we're coming down here, we want the latest stable that works for us. So we hit install and accept. And next, we're going to want the SQL Server. Same thing, make sure both boxes are checked. Latest stable, and go ahead and hit install. And accept. And then next, now we're going to go ahead and scaffold the models. So we can close out of that, go back to Tools, go to Nuget Package Manager. Oh, before we scaffold the models, let's connect it to the database first. So here we're going to go to Views. I have it over here in the tab, but we can go to Views, Server Explorer, select that. And then right here, the third button in from there, it says Connect to Database. It's a little box with a plug, so we're going to go ahead and hit select that. And here we have the server name. Your server name is going to be different from mine, but when you open the Server Explorer, it should say your server name right here. If not, you could always reopen SQL Server Management Studio. I'll just go ahead and do that real quick. Just to make sure which server that you created your database in, you got to remember that. So when you come here, it's this right here. Whatever you selected here, if you drop down, you can pick other stuff like this one. Make sure you select the same one that you used for when you created your database. So here I can just control copy it since I have it up anyways. And I can just close out of that since I don't need it anymore and paste it on here. And this right here will say, hey, I want to connect to this server, and then you can pick the database that you have in your server. For us, it's Books Authors Database right here, DB. This is the database we created earlier in the video. So we'll select it and hit OK. So now it says, hey, you are connected to Books Authors Database right here. So now we can go close out of that and bring us back to our Solution Explorer. and we're ready to scaffold the models. So we go to Tools, Nuget Package Manager Console, and it comes up down here. Let's bring it up just so everybody can see it clearer. So here we're going to start off with some a script that'll create your models, scaffold your models based on your database tables. So here we got scaffold dash DB context. Make sure the D is capital, the B is lowercase, and then we're going to do double quotes. Inside the quotes, we're going to say server equals, and you come back over here to your views, Server Explorer. The server that you connected to add that database is the server you want to type in here. So for in my instance, it's laptop-ba11OFN9. So here. That's my server name. Make sure you find your server name and add it to that spot right there. Next is a semicolon, and we're going to identify the database. So we got database equals, and we named our database. We could go to Views, SQL Server Object Explorer, and find the local database that we have right here, and find the databases. And here we have the books authors database, and that's the database that we're going to be using for this project. So we're going to come over here and say books authors DB. Next semicolon, and the rest of this is just going to be because we're using SQL Server. We're just going to go ahead and type the rest of this in. Trusted connection equals true. And then we're using Microsoft dot entity framework core dot capital S lowercase ql capital S for server. And then we're just going to point it to the models folder. So dash output directory dir models. Here we just go ahead and make sure that we've typed it correctly. So server equals laptop-ba11OFN9 database, the database name, trusted connection equals true, Microsoft.entity framework core.sql server, output directory models. And if we hit enter, it starts to build. Succeeded, and then it's going to go ahead and create our model for us. So here we can look over here and see that it created an author's model and a books model based off of our tables in our database. It also created a books author DB context, which we'll be using shortly. And finally, this is the model that came with the program. We go ahead and right click and get rid of it, delete that one. So if you look in here, you can see that there's an ID, first name, last name, and age, just like we created from the database. And then if you look at books, same thing. And we'll be creating a connection string, connecting it to through the connection string so we can create our controllers and our views. So if we go to appsetting.json, we're going to come down here and we're going to add some more code to here. So next we got the connection strings. So quotes, connection strings, and we're going to set that equal to 2 curly braces, and we're going to say, hey, we want to call it books authors database. So let's just call it BA connections. So BA connections. And colon, and we're going to get the same information that we did from down here. So if you still have this up, it's going to be down here. If not, you can still go here to your SQL Server Object Explorer to see your server name and your database name. So here we're just going to say server equals laptop dash BA11OFN9 semicolon, and it's going to be database equals books authors DB. Let's see, and then same thing, trusted connection underscore connection equals true, and multiple active result sets equals true. So that's it for the connection string. It's important to get these right. And remember this. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this name with the quotes. We'll come back to it and grab it. But remember that's your connection string. So next we're going to get out of the app setting.json and go to the startup.cs. And we're going to go ahead and add that DB context to the startup. So here under configure services, we're going to add a new service and call it .add DB context, angle brackets, and inside the angle brackets we want this context right here that was created with your models. It's called books authors DB context. We want that same name inside this DB context. So books authors DB context, it's right there. Next we're gonna set the options with lambda and then options, and we're going to use SQL Server configuration configuration .get string connection. And for ease of reading, I'm going to go ahead and split it right here, tab it in. So we're back here, configuration, get connection string. And this is where we use the connection string that we created over here in app-setting.json. You have the connection string name. We're going to go ahead and copy that one. Come back to startup, add it to this spot right here, and finish it with a semicolon. All right, so now that we've added the connection string, we're going to go ahead and begin to scaffold the controllers and the views. So we can come up here to the controllers, right click, add, new scaffolded item. And right here, we're going to select MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. You hit add. And here you want to select the model. So right now we have the authors model and the books model. We can start with authors. And the DB context that we're using is the books author DB context that we referred to earlier. And it's just going to go ahead and create an authors controller, an authors folder. And inside the authors folder in the views, it's going to create a bunch of views that we can use. So I'm going to go ahead and do it one more time for the books. So in case you missed it, we're going to controllers, add, new scaffolded item, MVC controllers with views using Entity Framework, hit add, and now we're going to select the books model this time. So books, same DB context, it's going to make a books controller, hit add, and that's going to make another folder with book views in it. Oh, that's crazy. Next we got, so we could check out one of the controllers. It's pretty cool that ASP does all this for you. Here you're getting all the information from the author's table. Next, you could get a single author information by selecting details and passing in the ID. Next, we're going to display a create page, which is like a form. And we're going to look at all this on the actual website in a second. But after that, we're going to come over here and we're going to say, hey, after you hit submit on the create form, it'll actually do a post to the database and save that data inside the database. Next, we're going to be able to edit the information, and that brings up the form to edit. And then this one is the post when you hit submit on the edit page. Next, we got the delete, so it's going to pull up the information about one author, and then if you select delete, it's going to go ahead and delete it from here on this action. So we got authors, books. Next, we're going to look at all these views that it creates. So there's authors and a books folder that has the index, which is the starting page, the edit form, the details page that displays all the details of the author, the delete page that displays also all the details of the author that you want to delete with the delete button at the bottom. Finally, the create page, so if you could create new authors to each one of these. Finally, just so we could see each one of these, I could run it real quick. So Control-Shift-V. Can I run it? I don't think I should run it yet. All right, so sorry, we're not going to run it yet. We're going to create some buttons on the index page so we can select the buttons and access each one of those indexes for the author and the books. So here we're going to have to go to, so I use Zen coding. It makes HTML much faster. To get Zen coding, you go to extensions, manage extensions. In the search bar, you just say Zen coding. Yeah, Zen coding. So this is pretty cool. It makes it really quick to create divs and classes and other things inside HTML and Razor pages. So we're going to go here and say div.container. Since we're using Bootstrap, we're going to go ahead and create all these divs with classes. So div.row and div.column. And we're going to want two of these columns inside the row. So say 2. So this pretty much says we're going to create a container. We're going to create one row inside the container, and we're going to take 2 columns inside the row. So if I hit tab, it creates everything for you. It's going to open these 2 columns up. And we're going to have to take a break here. And we will finish this after the break.
Hey everyone, sorry we had to go to class, but we're ready to pick right up off where we left. So yeah, Richard's going to go ahead and continue it.
All right, so we left off where we wanted to just create some links so we could see the actual views that we've created earlier. So it's going to link it to the index of each of these. And we could start off by looking at the author's controller. If you look at author's controller index right here, that's the action method we're about to call from the main homepage of our application. And from there, it will be routed to the author's index page where we can display the information from the database, and as well as create a new row with data in it, and as well as all the other functions in there. And we'll see that shortly. So right now we're just creating a link that'll route to there. So first we're going to start with the authors. So it's just a tab. It'll make this href, but we don't need this href. We're going to go use the ASP-action because we're using the index action method. And because there's more than one controller, we want to identify the controller. So ASP-controller. And we are using the author controller. So this part where it says ASP controller, it's saying, hey, we're going to use this author's controller up here. And whenever you refer to this author's controller, you're able to refer to it without the word controller attached to it. ASP knows to just use this controller when you refer to author's controller.
Yeah, and then if you actually put the controller also in there, from personal experience, it will not work. So
Yeah,
you do not put the controller word in there when you're referencing that controller.
All right, and then so the next part of it that we put in there was the ASP action. And every single time you see ASP action, that's talking about a method inside the controller. So we're going to go back to the author's controller and find the action, which is the index, as we've identified. So, and this will create a link. Right now it's a blank link. We'll name it authors. Right here is what you're going to actually see on the screen, highlight, that's clickable. And then, so this is the actual full link. And we'll do that one more time with the books. So we'll A tab and delete this and do ASP-action and index again, because in books over here, the books controller, it's also called index for their homepage. And then we have to identify the controller, so ASP-controller, and we want books. And again, that's because we have the books controller here without the word controller, and we're referring to this index. So this is good to go. Oh, it's not good to go. We need something to click. So now we have books. This is the words that are going to be printed on the website that you could actually click. So we'll do Control-Shift-B to build the project. And build succeeded. So we'll do F5 to launch it in our browser. We can make it big. And we should see two links. So we have the author's link and the books link. So if we select the author's link, it's going to route us to the author's homepage, where you can see that the information that we input into the database earlier is displayed here. We could create new and say another user, and that person is 18, and author. And so create. And then here we can say edit. Of course, we can edit any of these and say, hey, this isn't a user, this is an author. So we can say author and save. So now we have another author, and in details, it shows it all, the information about it, back to list. And finally, we could delete it. And it'll pull the information one more time and say, do you want to delete? And we say delete, and it'll bring you back to this page. We did forget to add a little button to take us back to the home screen of where the books are. So this is the home page. It's where the author is. We do books. And now we have Tim's book. That's nonfiction. And we could create a new book and say
Richard's book.
Richard's book. And in this case, since we're not going through SQL, we could add that code there. And maybe this one's fiction. And was that? Yeah, I was the first. Yeah, I was the first author ID. So we say create. So this book is linked to me through here, and this book is linked to Tim here, and we can actually edit Tim's, so it has that little thing too, and hit save. And that is it. We could go ahead and go back and create that little button since we're here. So if we just go ahead and go to, let's close this out first, and go to the index of each of these pages, and just go ahead and add the A tag. So we got, we could go ahead and add it to the bottom of this table and just say A tag, oops, same thing, we want ASP action, and this one's also called index, but this time we're going to use the ASP home, oops, HP controller from the home controller, which is here. And as you can see, we also have the index. Of course, we could route this to any method inside these home controllers. So we're using index, but this index could be create. It could be whatever action method you want to use. So we were at the authors, and we're making the home, and here say go back to main page. And we're just going to go ahead and copy this and put it into the other one as well. And we could show you that this link will take you right on back to the main page. So if we Control-Shift-B again, we'll build it. And then F5 to launch it. Now you can see you can click authors. Oops.
The index.
What happened?
Go back to your main index. Is that your main?
Yeah, that was in my main. Let's see what happened here. Oh.
Yeah. When you were showing it, you
That
accidentally
happened.
dragged it. There you go.
All right, Control-Shift-B. I think it's actually running still. Oh, it's not running still. F5. Then we select authors. It takes us to the home page of the author. It says go back to main page. Route us back here. You can say books. Go back to main page. Route us back. And that is the end of this video. If this was helpful, please let us know, and we'll continue to try to make other videos. Tim and I enjoy algorithms more, so we'll be making some algorithm videos here in the future. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.